My name is Doris Schrader, 35 years old. If someone told me a few years ago that my marriage would collapse not because of hatred, but because of biology, or worse, blame, I would have laughed. Stanley and I were the couple everyone envied, same sense of humor, same drive, same quiet devotion. We met at a marketing conference 8 years ago. I was the pragmatic data analyst who believed love was a slow build. He was the dreamer with a grin that disarmed every logical part of me. On our first date, he said, "You look like the kind of woman who never gives up." I thought it was a compliment. I didn't realize it would become my curse. It started with the doctor's words, soft, hesitant, rehearsed. "Your hormone levels are on the lower end, Doris. We might have to consider assisted reproduction." Stanley squeezed my hand in that sterile white room. "It's okay," he whispered. "We'll fight this together." And we did. At first. I became an expert in syringes and ovulation kits. The refrigerator door was a graveyard of appointment reminders and inspirational quotes. Hope is a muscle. He changed too quietly at first. Little things. The way he stopped joking during our nightly walks. The way he'd stare out the window after another failed round saying nothing. And then one night, after our 6th IVF cycle failed, he exhaled sharply and muttered, "Maybe some things just aren't meant to be." I didn't cry. Not then. I was too busy holding him saying, "We'll try again." Months passed. We lived like business partners chasing a fading project. I woke up at 5 a.m. for hormone shots while he scrolled through his phone under the covers. He started going to late meetings. I told myself that's what career people do, chase deals, not dreams. But hope makes you blind. It blinds you to the scent of perfume that isn't yours, to the way he started dressing sharper, to the sudden gym membership he said was stress relief. One afternoon after a grocery run, I noticed something strange in his car, a crumpled paper bag from a pharmacy. Inside was a pregnancy test, not the brand we used. My first instinct was to laugh. Surely it wasn't what I thought. Maybe a colleague's prank. Maybe he bought it for me and forgot. But the date on the receipt was yesterday, and I hadn't been to that store in months. That night, I asked casually, "Hey, you were near Crescent Pharmacy yesterday." He didn't even flinch. "Oh yeah, needed antacids." The conference lunch messed me up. I smiled, nodded, kissed him goodnight, and lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to him breathe beside me, wondering how long lies could sound so normal. The next day, I called in sick, sat in my car outside his office just to see, not to accuse, just see. At 6:45 p.m., he walked out laughing, with a woman, slim long hair, crimson heels clicking against the pavement. She leaned into him, whispering something that made him grin the way he used to grin at me. Her name, I learned later, was Lara. She worked 2 floors down. She'd once commented on a social media post of ours, "Cutest couple ever. Funny how betrayal always knows how to smile." That night, when Stanley came home smelling like expensive cologne, I didn't confront him. Instead, I cooked dinner, like always grilled salmon, his favorite, and watched him eat, wondering if guilt tasted bitter. When he went to shower, his phone buzzed on the counter. A voicemail. A woman's voice, muffled, breathless. "He said you couldn't give him what he needed. But we'll make it right, I promise." My blood turned to ice. He came out, towel draped over his shoulders, humming. I met his eyes and smiled like nothing broke. Inside, something irreversible had begun to crack. That night, I lay awake again. In the glow of the streetlights spilling through our blinds, I stared at the ceiling and whispered to no one. What does it mean to fail someone? Was failure not giving them what they want, or not seeing what they've become? Outside rain began to fall slow and steady. The sound reminded me of the clinic waiting room, the drip of IVs, the hum of machines, the dull ache of hope. I thought of our last fertility appointment just weeks earlier. Dr. Patel had said gently, "Sometimes couples need to redefine what family means." Stanley had smiled and squeezed my hand, but that same night I caught him scrolling baby clothes on his phone. Only later did I realize he wasn't buying them for us. Days blurred into silence. We played our parts. I cooked, he worked. But our house had become a museum, photos of a couple who no longer existed. I'd stand in the hallway staring at the framed ultrasound photo from our first failed attempt, thinking how cruel hope can be, how it doesn't die, it just changes shape. Then came the moment that snapped the string. We were sitting at dinner, rain again, tapping on the windows, when he said without looking up, "Lara's pregnant." Just like that. No build-up, no apology, just 3 words that ended everything. I froze, fork midair. He added quietly, "It just happened." She wasn't supposed to tell me yet, but I thought you should know. There was no thunder, no screaming. Only my voice, distant hollow. Congratulations. He blinked, startled. Doris? I didn't mean. I stood, set my plate down gently, and walked out to the porch. The rain drenched me instantly, but I didn't move. Because for the first time I realized the storm outside wasn't nearly as violent as the one inside. When I woke the next morning, I wasn't sure if last night had been real or some cruel half-dream born of exhaustion. But then I saw at his side of the bed, empty, his phone charger, gone a faint cologne trail on the pillow that wasn't mine to breathe anymore. He'd left for work early, or maybe he just left. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, the way someone stares at a door that's already closed, but still hopes it might open again. By noon, I was on autopilot, brushing my hair, making coffee, replying to work emails with words that felt foreign. But in my chest, something sharp pulsed beneath the calm. Not rage, not grief. Something colder, clarity. I didn't confront him right away. I waited. For 3 days, I watched patterns. He came home later, his eyes brighter, his phone never out of reach. And when I finally asked quietly, like a confession instead of an accusation, "Do you love her?" He flinched, then smiled without warmth. "I didn't plan this, Doris, but she gave me something you couldn't." He didn't even say child. He just let the word something hang in the air, heavy and cruel. My hands trembled under the table. "I gave you everything," I whispered. He sighed. "That's the problem. You gave too much. You forgot how to live." There it was, the justification, the rewriting of history that cheaters always do, making their betrayal sound like your flaw. That night, I went through his phone. I'd never done it before. I used to think trust meant privacy. But when truth rots the air, you start searching for proof to match the pain. It didn't take long. Threads of messages with Laura, flirty, tender, eventually explicit. One photo of a positive pregnancy test with the caption, "Our miracle finally happened. Maybe this will make him understand." Him, Stanley. My breath caught. The time stamp 2 weeks after our last IVF failure. My hands went numb. I dropped the phone on the counter and stared at it like it might explode. The irony was surgical. All those nights he told me, "It's okay. We'll keep trying," while he was already building a new future with someone else, one that didn't include me. When I finally confronted him, I didn't shout. He walked in, loosened his tie, saw me sitting there with his phone in my hand. For a second, he froze. Then the mask slipped. Annoyance, not guilt. "So you went through my phone," he said. "I found what you hid," I answered. He shrugged, leaned against the counter. "Doris, don't make this uglier than it already is. I didn't cheat to hurt you." I laughed, a small hollow sound. "You cheated to heal yourself? That's worse." He looked down, muttered, "You wouldn't understand. You were obsessed with the idea of being a mother. I just wanted a wife who remembered she was a woman." That one line sliced deeper than any betrayal could. Because it was true, I had lost myself somewhere between hormone injections and hope. But I'd done it for us. And now he was using my devotion as his excuse. He stayed with friends that night. The next morning he texted, "I need time to think. Laura's pregnancy changes everything." I stared at that message until the screen dimmed. Changes everything, like our 7-year marriage was just a line item on a spreadsheet. That evening, I went into what used to be the nursery. The walls were still painted a pale yellow, we'd chosen together, optimism in color form. I sat on the floor, surrounded by unopened boxes of baby clothes I'd ordered months ago when I still believed in miracles. Slowly, methodically, I began packing them away. Each folded onesie felt like a eulogy. By the time I reached the last box, my tears had dried. In their place, a steady, simmering quiet. Days later, he came back. Not with apologies, with justification. He sat at the dining table like it was some negotiation. "You know, this doesn't have to be the end," he began. "She doesn't want to keep it. I told her I need time. We can start over." I stared at him unblinking. "You want to start over after making a baby with someone else?" He rubbed his temples. "You're taking this too personally." The absurdity almost made me laugh. Too personally, I repeated, voice rising for the first time. "You told another woman the only reason you cheated was because I failed you. How personal do you think that feels?" He slammed his hand on the table, the mask cracking. "You did. You couldn't give me a family. What was I supposed to do? Watch my life pass by while you keep injecting yourself with hormones and crying over test results." Silence followed, the kind that suffocates. I whispered, "You could have loved me anyway." The argument ended without resolution. They never do. He left again, this time for good. His suitcase wheels scraping the tile echoed like thunder down the hallway. When the door shut, the house went quiet. Too quiet. I stood there surrounded by the ghost of everything we'd built, the wedding photos, the to-do lists, the dreams. On the fridge was our old fertility calendar, circled dates and hopeful hearts drawn beside them. I ripped it off and threw it in the trash, because the miracle he found wasn't mine to mourn. That night, I sat alone on the couch with the lamp casting a dull orange glow. On the table lay my wedding ring, small, delicate, cold. I picked it up, turned it in my fingers, and whispered, "You said she gave you life, then go live it." I didn't cry this time. Instead, I felt something uncoil, the first breath of freedom that still hurt to inhale. Because grief and liberation wear the same face at first. They both arrive after everything dies. Silence has a way of becoming its own language. In the weeks after Stanley left, I learned to speak it fluently. At first, it was unbearable. The quiet after his footsteps faded the stillness in the kitchen, where his laughter used to echo. But then something strange happened. The silence started answering me back. I'd wake up at 600 a.m., out of habit, roll over to find the empty space beside me, cold. No toothbrush beside mine. No mug waiting in the sink. Even the couch cushion he used to sink into had straightened out like the house itself was relieved to be breathing again. The first Sunday alone, I sat in that same spot where he once confessed. The light was softer now, almost forgiving. I made myself tea and replayed his words over and over. "You failed me as a woman." It sounded different now, smaller, almost pitiful. The kind of thing said by a man too cowardly to face his own emptiness. Still, grief is sneaky. It visits between errands, in line at the grocery store, or when you accidentally pass the baby aisle. Sometimes I'd catch myself wondering if Lara had given birth yet. Did the baby look like him? Did he get what he wanted? The miracle he blamed me for not giving. But wondering didn't heal anything. So I did what I do best. I turned pain into a project. I organized, deep cleaned, and donated half the house. Each drawer I emptied was like peeling back a layer of denial. A crumpled concert ticket from our first trip together. A letter he wrote during our second IVF attempt. "No matter what happens, you'll always be my home." I almost laughed reading it, because now I realized he never meant me. He meant whatever version of me made him feel comfortable. One afternoon, I found a manila envelope tucked in the back of the desk drawer. Old medical files, test results, treatment invoices. I flipped through them absent-mindedly until one page made me stop. It was from his fertility screening nearly 2 years ago. The doctor's notes were blunt. Possible low motility detected. Recommend follow-up testing. But there was no follow-up. He'd never gone back. My chest tightened. I checked the timeline that was before he started hinting that I was the problem. Before he told me to be patient. Before he blamed my body for his ego. The air left my lungs. All those injections, tears, hormone crashes. For what? To protect him from the truth he couldn't bear. I sank onto the floor, clutching the file to my chest, shaking not from sorrow this time, but from the violent electric pulse of clarity. That night I booked an appointment at a new clinic. Different doctor, different city, no shared records. I didn't want comfort. I wanted facts. The waiting room felt colder without him beside me. When my name was called, I walked in steady heart pounding, like I was walking into court instead of a consultation. A week later, the results arrived by email. All parameters normal. No fertility issues detected. I reread the sentence 10 times, eyes blurring. Then I laughed a raw, disbelieving laugh that cracked into a sob halfway through. The truth felt both freeing and infuriating. He had blamed me to hide his shame. He had weaponized my love. I printed the report and pinned it to my fridge right where our fertility calendar used to hang. A private flag of victory. No one else needed to know yet. But I did. That night I cooked for myself. Not to impress anyone, not to share, just to nourish me. Jazz played softly. The windows open, wind threading through the curtains. And for the first time in months, I didn't flinch at the sound of my own laughter. Still, healing isn't linear. Some nights I'd wake up reaching for him, then remember. Other nights I'd replay our last argument not to punish myself, but to memorize it. Because remembering the cruelty was how I stopped romanticizing the past. Sophie, my oldest friend, called often. She didn't ask what happened. She already knew enough to say what mattered. "You don't owe anyone your silence, Doris." He built a house on your back then, called it his achievement. Her words sat with me, heavy, honest grounding. 3 months passed. The divorce papers arrived in my inbox like a business transaction. No apology, just digital signatures and asset divisions. I clicked sign, then closed my laptop. It was done, just like that. I walked to the balcony, the city glowing gold beneath the setting sun. Freedom didn't feel triumphant. It felt quiet. Like standing in the ruins of something sacred, realizing the silence was now mine to fill. That night my phone buzzed. Stanley. I hadn't seen his name on my screen since he left. The message was short. Can we talk? My thumb hovered over the reply button. Curiosity and disgust tangled in my stomach. Part of me wanted to ignore him. Part of me wanted to hear what ruins sound like when they try to rebuild. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I stared at the city lights until dawn crept in, whispering to myself, he took my peace once. He won't take my sleep again. But deep down, I knew his return wasn't far away, and when it came, it wouldn't be for forgiveness. It would be for survival. He came back on a Thursday, not with flowers, not with apologies, but with a baby in his arms. I remember the sound before I saw him, a faint knock, uneven, followed by a whimper that didn't belong to any adult. When I opened the door there, he was Stanley, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot, clutching a bundle wrapped in pale blue. Doris, his voice cracked, rough from sleepless nights. Please, I didn't know where else to go. For a moment, my body forgot how to breathe. The baby stirred tiny fingers curling against his chest, the softest sound escaping its lips. It shouldn't have meant anything, but something primal inside me twisted, not longing, not love, just an ache carved from all those years I'd been told I couldn't be a mother. Why are you here? My voice was calm, detached, almost clinical. He swallowed hard. Lara's gone. Gone where she left a note, said she couldn't do this anymore, that I could keep my miracle. Then she disappeared. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. Congratulations, I said quietly. You finally got what you wanted, responsibility. His eyes filled with tears. Please, Doris, don't do this. I messed up, I know, but you're the only one who can help. You know how to take care of people. You always did. That line, you always did. As if my love had been a skill, a service, a thing he could summon when convenient. He stepped forward, desperation rising. Look, I can't do this alone. I'm back at work next week, and Noah. The baby, he said quickly. His name's Noah. The name hit me like a ghost of a life that could have been mine. We'd picked that name once years ago in the parking lot of a clinic after another failed round. He'd said, if it's a boy, Noah, for hope. And now that name belonged to someone else's child, one born of deceit. I looked at the tiny face nestled against him, so innocent, so unaware of the chaos that made him. But when I met Stanley's eyes, all I saw was fear. Not love, not regret, fear of his own consequences. I can't help you, I said, voice steady. He blinked. You don't mean that. I do. Please, he whispered. He cries all night. I haven't slept in days. I can't eat. Lara, she won't even answer her family. I don't know what to do. My silence stretched between us like a wall. Once upon a time, I would have rushed to fix it, brewed him tea, made plans, soothed his guilt. Now I just let the moment hurt. He shifted, rocking the baby slightly. Just for tonight, he begged. Please, Doris, just help me get through tonight. I looked past him to the car parked outside trunk filled with diapers and formula. He hadn't just come to talk. He'd come prepared to stay. You planned this, I said softly. You waited until you had nowhere else to go. His mouth opened, then closed. No denial. I took a step closer, not toward him, but toward the truth. Do you remember what you said to me the last night in this house? He frowned. Doris, this isn't the time. No. You said you failed me as a woman. He froze. And now you're standing here holding the proof that you failed as a man. His jaw tightened. The baby whimpered. For a second, guilt flickered in his eyes, real raw, unguarded. Then it disappeared, replaced by something uglier, entitlement. You can't hold on to this forever, he snapped. You're better than that. I smiled faintly. No, Stanley. I'm free because of that. The baby started to cry, a soft, desperate sound that filled the doorway. Stanley bounced him gently, eyes wet. Please, Doris. He's innocent. Don't punish him for my mistakes. The ache in my chest deepened. I reached out not to take the baby, but to adjust the blanket slipping from his shoulder. Take him home, Stanley. He's not mine, and neither are you. He flinched like I'd slapped him. I can't do this without you. Yes, you can. You just don't want to. He stood there for a long moment, shoulders shaking. Then he whispered, "You're really done with me, aren't you? I was done the moment you made me doubt myself." He looked down at the baby, then back at me. "You'll regret this," he muttered. "You'll regret walking away when someone needed you." I almost laughed. "You mean when you needed me, not the baby?" And then, because it felt right, I added, "You didn't want a wife, Stanley. You wanted a caretaker with no boundaries. That's not love, that's dependence." He turned to leave. At the top of the steps, he stopped, his voice breaking. "She left a few of his things at her place. I'll have to go back tomorrow." I didn't respond. When the door closed, the house was quiet again. But this time the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Later that night, the phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, an older woman's voice spoke through static. "Doris, it's Margaret, Stanley's mother. I know you're angry, but please, he's not himself. The baby needs stability. He needs a mother's love. And I know you, dear. You've always had that kind of heart." I sat there in the dark phone, glowing in my hand. A mother's love. The words echoed like a curse and a blessing at once. Because I did have that kind of heart. I just wasn't going to waste it on people who mistook it for weakness. I deleted the voicemail and whispered to myself, "He made his bed. Now he can learn how to sing lullabies in it." The night air drifted in through the window, cool and gentle. For the first time, I didn't feel haunted by the sound of crying. Only free. It's strange how fast the world adjusts when your personal earthquake becomes public. At first, people looked at me with that tilted head pity, the kind reserved for women who lost their husbands. But then the whispers began to shift. Someone at Stanley's company leaked the truth that Laura had left, that the baby wasn't the fairy tale ending he'd promised everyone, that I'd been the one quietly keeping things together while he was playing savior in someone else's story. By the end of the month, pity had turned to judgment, not toward me, but toward him. It started with a message from Sophie. "Have you seen his office group chat?" They know. Apparently, Laura had quit without notice, leaving behind her laptop and a folder of emails she'd saved for legal protection. Those emails included Stanley bragging to a colleague about finally being with a real woman. Within days, everyone knew. His boss called it a breach of professionalism. His friends called it karma. And me, I just called it Tuesday. The texts came next, old coworkers, distant relatives, even his mother again. "We didn't know what he did to you. You're stronger than all of us. He's ruined his own reputation, Doris. You just keep shining." But I didn't feel strong. Not yet. Strength, I learned, isn't loud. It's not about revenge posts or public statements. It's about getting up, brushing your hair, and drinking your morning coffee in peace. And peace, I realized, was the one thing Stanley could never give me because he'd never had it himself. One afternoon, I drove to the donation center with a car full of baby clothes, the ones I'd bought years ago during our fertility phase. They'd sat boxed in the attic ghosts of dreams that once mattered. When the volunteer asked if I wanted a receipt for tax purposes, I smiled. "No," I said softly. "Just make sure they go to someone who actually deserves a miracle." I walked out lighter. By summer, I'd started to bloom again. Therapy became less about survival and more about discovery. I painted again badly, but freely. I volunteered at a community arts program for kids, teaching them how to tell stories with color. That's where I met Emma. She was a ceramics instructor, quiet but steady, with eyes that had seen storms but didn't talk about them. We started with casual hellos, shared lunch breaks, the occasional laughter over spilled coffee. Then one evening she said, "You have this calm energy, like you rebuilt yourself from ashes." I smiled. I did, and I kept the blueprint this time. Meanwhile, Stanley was unraveling. Sophie sent me screenshots of mutual friends' posts. His coworkers whispered that he'd been taking paternity leave and stress leave back to back. Laura had gone completely off-grid, no one knew where she was. And the baby little Noah had become the silent witness to his father's collapse. His mother called again, this time tearful. "He's not coping, Doris. The baby cries all night. He's exhausted. Please, can't you talk to him?" I hesitated, then said what I should have said months earlier. "No, Margaret. He didn't want my voice when I still had love for him. He doesn't get it now that he needs forgiveness." She sniffed guilt cutting through her tone. "He's still family." "No," I said, "he's history." Word spread further about how I'd been the one unjustly blamed for infertility. Someone must have told someone, because soon even strangers online were leaving comments on old anniversary photos that still floated around. "He didn't deserve you. You dodged a bullet, girl." I didn't reply, but sometimes I'd scroll through them at night, not for validation, but to remind myself that truth has its own way of surfacing. Then one quiet evening, while painting in my living room, my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. I almost ignored it until the preview lit up. Stanley, he's sick. Please, Doris, I don't know what to do. My hand went cold. I read it once, twice. The message wasn't long, but the desperation bled through every word. For a moment, I imagined the scene, him pacing in the dim light of his apartment, the baby crying, panic rising. The same man who once told me I wasn't enough of a woman now begging for the compassion he'd crushed. I placed the phone down on the table, stared at it until the screen dimmed, then turned it over. My therapist's words echoed in my head. You can acknowledge someone's pain without re-entering it. So I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the window. The evening breeze brushed against my skin, soft cleansing. Somewhere out there, Stanley's world was burning. Mine was finally quiet. And I wasn't going back to put out fires I didn't start. 3 days passed before the next message came. This time it wasn't just text. It was a voicemail. When I pressed play, all I heard was chaos, a baby's wail, Stanley's voice breaking the panic of a man cornered by consequences. Doris, please, I'm at the hospital. Noah's burning up. I don't know what to do. They're asking for next of kin. And God, I can't do this alone. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please just come. For a long time, I sat there on the couch staring at nothing, the sound looping in my head. I wanted to delete it. I wanted to forget. But then I heard it again, that raw, terrified cry in the background. Not his, the baby's. And even though that child wasn't mine, some ancient reflex inside me, something older than reason, deeper than pride, told me I couldn't ignore it. The hospital lights were too bright, too clean, too familiar. I'd spent years in places like this. Waiting rooms, clinics, the scent of antiseptic and anxiety. It felt cruelly poetic that I was back in one, just not for the child I once prayed for. When I walked in, Stanley was sitting slumped in a plastic chair, eyes swollen, hair matted. Noah was asleep in his arms, an oxygen monitor blinking gently against his tiny wrist. He looked up like a man who'd seen a ghost. Maybe he had. You came, he whispered. I nodded once. I came for the child, not for you. His shoulders sagged, relief and shame mixing into something unrecognizable. The doctor explained that Noah had a respiratory infection, serious but manageable. Dehydration, fever, exhaustion. Single parents often get overwhelmed, she said, glancing between us, assuming. I didn't correct her. I didn't say, he's not mine. When the doctor left, silence took its place. The kind that forces truth out like blood from a wound. I didn't know who else to call. Stanley said finally. I thought maybe what I cut in, that I'd drop everything and save you again. He looked down, rubbing his hands together. I know I don't deserve it, but you were always the calm one. You'd know what to do. I studied him, the same man who once stood taller, sharper, too proud to admit fear. Now his voice trembled. His confidence was gone, replaced by panic. I told you once, I said softly, that love is loyalty. You thought it was excitement. This is what excitement looks like when the lights go out. He winced, jaw tightening, but didn't speak. Hours passed. The nurses changed shifts. The baby's breathing steadied. And in the quiet hum of machines, I saw flashes of the man I once loved. Not the cheater, not the coward, but the frightened boy who never learned how to face failure. He whispered. She told me she was on birth control. I didn't even know until it was too late. I thought I could fix it. I thought having the baby would make it right. I looked at him steady. You didn't want a baby, Stanley. You wanted proof you weren't broken. He covered his face, voice cracking. I ruined everything. Yes, I said quietly. You did. The words didn't sting this time. They just existed. Like a fact no longer emotional, just true. Around dawn, Noah stirred. His small hand gripped my finger, eyes fluttering open for the first time. He looked nothing like Stanley, nothing like Laura either. Just a blank canvas, innocent, undeserving of all this pain. I felt a tear slide down my cheek before I could stop it. For a moment, I let myself imagine if life had been different, if love had been honest, maybe this was what motherhood might have felt like. But then I remembered I didn't need someone else's betrayal to define my worth as a woman. I gently set Noah's hand back on the blanket and stood. Stanley looked up confused. You're leaving? Yes. Now, yes. He reached out, voice trembling. Doris, please, I can't do this alone. I met his gaze, calm and final. You already are. That's the lesson. He blinked, stunned. You're just going to walk out? No, Stanley, I'm going to live. As I walked down the hospital corridor, dawn light filtered through the windows, that same gray-blue hue that once greeted me after every failed IVF test. Back then, it felt like the start of another cycle of pain. Now it felt like closure. Outside, the air was crisp. I stood in the parking lot watching the sunrise, the city still half asleep. Somewhere above, the first birds began to sing. And in that quiet moment, I whispered to myself, "You were never barren, Doris. You were just waiting to bloom in your own soil." I took one last look at the hospital doors behind me, the place where one chapter ended and another finally began. Then I walked away, the light catching on my face like absolution. 6 months passed. Enough time for the seasons to shift, for old wounds to scar over, for the echoes of a name to finally stop hurting. I didn't realize how much lighter I'd become until one morning, standing at my window, I caught myself smiling at nothing, just the way the sunlight fell across the table, the steam rising from my coffee, the sound of the city waking up. This was peace. Quiet, ordinary, unremarkable peace. And after everything, it felt extraordinary. I'd moved downtown by then, a small apartment overlooking the river, the kind of place where the world feels close yet distant enough to breathe. Every morning, I'd watch the boats drift past the water glinting gold. I'd sit there, notebook in hand, writing pieces of myself back together. My therapist once said, "Closure isn't something you wait for, it's something you write yourself." So I did. I filled pages with thoughts, letters. I'd never send truths I'd once been too afraid to speak. And in one of those letters, the last one addressed to him, I wrote, "Stanley, you didn't break me. You just showed me where I was already strong." Then I tore it up and fed it to the wind over the river. Work was thriving. I'd gotten a quiet promotion team lead for a new project, and my colleagues had started looking to me, not just for numbers, but for steadiness. I'd learned to say no without guilt, to delegate, to leave the office before dark. Sophie still checked in, always with humor. "You're glowing," she teased one afternoon over lunch. "That must mean you're either in love or you finally started sleeping 8 hours. I smiled. Both, actually. Because there was someone new, Emma. It wasn't fireworks or fate, it was something gentler. A slow, steady unfolding. We met again at the community center. She'd dropped a mug while unpacking art supplies, and I caught it midair. We laughed, and she said, "I think you're good at saving fragile things," I replied. "Not anymore. Now I just let them find their balance." We started walking together after classes. Small talk, shared silences, long pauses that felt like breathing. Emma never asked about my past. She didn't need to. She saw me as I was, now whole, unguarded, soft again. Some nights she'd stay over, and we'd sit by the window, the city lights reflecting off the water. She'd trace the lines on my palm and whisper, "This one, this means you always find your way home." And I did. Finally, I was home in my own skin, in my own story. Every now and then, Stanley's name still surfaced. Mutual friends mentioned he'd moved back with his mother, that he was working remotely, quieter than before. They said Noah was healthy, walking now, babbling words that filled the air of the small apartment they shared. I didn't feel hatred anymore, only distance, like watching a movie I'd seen once but no longer remembered the ending to. Because that part of my life didn't need revisiting, it just needed to stay done. One evening, as I was closing up the art studio, a familiar voice called my name. I turned Sophie, waving her phone. "Did you see the article?" she said, grinning. "They featured your community program front page of the local blog." I laughed, shaking my head. "You're kidding." She handed me the phone, and there it was, a photo of me surrounded by kids painting with messy hands and wide smiles. Headline, "From Broken to Builder: How One Woman Turned Pain into Purpose." For a moment, I just stood there blinking at it. Not because I cared about the recognition, but because it was true. I had built something from the wreckage. Something lasting, something mine. Later that night, I sat on my balcony with Emma beside me, both of us wrapped in a blanket, the air cool and sweet. She handed me a mug of tea and asked quietly, "If you could tell your younger self one thing, the one who thought she'd failed, what would it be?" I smiled, looking out at the river. I'd tell her she was never broken. She was just loving people who hadn't learned how to receive love. Emma reached for my hand. And now I said I love the quiet. And I trust myself more than I ever trusted anyone else. The river shimmered beneath the moonlight, and for a moment, everything, every heartbreak, every betrayal, every sleepless night felt like it had led here. I took a deep breath, the kind that feels like a beginning. Because that's what it was. The life after him wasn't about revenge or proving anything. It was about remembering that healing doesn't erase the past, it reclaims it. And as the city lights flickered below, I whispered the words that had once been thrown at me like a curse and turned them into my own quiet triumph. He said I failed him as a woman, but losing him made me whole. If you've ever been blamed for someone else's mistakes, remember this: it's not your failure to carry. Tell me your story in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you believe healing is its own kind of victory.